Hello again. Welcome to Lesson 10, Exponents. Okay, so first off, question number 1, find the value of each expression. This is simple enough. What you have to do is just to it's a test whether you recognize what an exponent is in the first place. So 5 to the exponent 5 would be 5 times 5 times 5 times 5 times 5. You type that in your calculator. 5 times 5 times 5 times 5 times 5. And you would get, I don't know if you can see it, 3,125. 3,125. And sure enough, on your calculator, if you type in 5 with this little exponent button, this little arrow, and you should be able to see it in this top left hand corner here, you get the same thing. Okay? Alright, so question 1, that's simple as that. Now question 2, simplify each product. So this goes back to exponent rules. Now I'm going to go on a limb and assume that you are familiar with some of these. Okay? Now when you're multiplying two numbers with exponents and they have the same base, you can simply add the exponents. Now that only works if you're multiplying. That dot signifies multiplying. Okay? Same base. So the base will not change. 12 plus 35 plus 35. And your answer is 10 to the power of 47. And you're done. Okay? Number 3. This is to test whether you recognize that when you see letters, they are variables. Think of it as placeholders. Okay? Think of it as a coaster, if you will. Numbers replace these variables eventually. So in this case, we got y to the exponent 4. So it's asking us to solve each expression for these values. So x equals 5, y equals -1, and z equals 4. So y equals -1. So in this case, y equals -1 to the exponent 4, which is the same as saying -1 times -1 times -1 times -1, which you can type it in the calculator, okay? Or, you know what, for the sake of this lesson, go ahead and type in your calculator. So you have -1 times -1 times -1 times -1, which give us +1. Okay? 1. And you're done. Now for this one, I want to do one more example. And I'm going to do this example down here. E. So, what we're going to have here is instead of y, we're going to have -1. Now you notice how once the y has been removed and replaced with -1, I included the brackets. The only reason I did that, so I'm going to put this as green, is to remind myself that the y is not a 1, but rather a -1. Like a 1 is not the same as -1. You owing me $1 versus me owing you $1 is not the same thing. Okay? Now, instead of x, I'm going to put that purple, we are going to have 5. And don't forget the original brackets on the outside to the exponent 3. Okay? Now what's in the brackets? -1 times 5. That will give me -5. And if you don't believe me, let me show it. Put it in the calculator and show you. -1 times 5, -5. Okay? To the exponent 3, which this is then -5 times -5 times -5. And for the sake of this lesson, you can type that in, -5 times -5 times -5, -125. And voila. Okay, and now the second page, it gets a little bit more complicated, but it's the exact same thing. So I will do just the first one for you. Okay, and now you notice the values are different in this case. Each question, these placeholders or coasters or whatever you want to call them, variables, change from question to question. Okay, now so do the variables themselves. It doesn't have to be X, Y, Z every time. It could be A, B, C, Q, R, S, banana, apples, oranges. It doesn't matter. Okay, if you're artistic, you can draw a lion instead of an X, but everywhere you have an X, you would need to draw a lion. Okay, that's why we use the alphabet. It's the easiest. So instead of X, we are going to have 2. So 2 cubed. You know what? I'm going to do that just to emphasize my point. So these X's, I'm going to keep it green. Okay? And so now you do the same thing to the top and to the bottom. So the top would be 2 times 2 times 2. The bottom would just be simply 2. And then what's 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, so we would have 8 over 2. Now fractions is just simply division, right? And what's 8 divided by 2? 4. You're done. Alrighty? Okay, see you next lesson.